Right now, I am playing the role of Edward Scissorhands, but with barrels. Welcome to Barrel World. I called my friend Brad Behn a few weeks ago, and I said, Brad, I want a new barrel. You got anything? He said, yeah, and he sent me this barrel. Do you know what was in the box? 5 more barrels. It's amazing. I'm happier than I've ever been before in my life. Okay, so let me tell you about these barrels. But before I tell you about these barrels, let me tell you when you should buy a new barrel and when you should not buy a new barrel. Because I do want to be fair, honest, and upfront about it. Now, listen, the most important thing you can do in your clarinet playing to make an improvement, if you're struggling with something's not quite right, or you just want a different outcome entirely, the thing you should change is you. And that means changing our voicing, refining our voicing maybe making sure our air is right, making sure our embouchure, all that stuff is the most important thing about your clarinet playing. The next most important thing about your clarinet playing is your reed, then the mouthpiece, then maybe the barrel and the clarinet. Those are further down the list. And if you noticed, it starts here and goes out here, and then the further it gets from this, the less impact it has. That's just, as far as I'm concerned, true. That being said, let's check out some barrels because it's super fun. But when is the right time for you? What kind of problem do you have? Wait, don't answer that. That's too broad of a question. What kind of problem do you have with your clarinet, in your estimation? The problem I was having, the thing I wanted to be different, was how my throat tones, my A flat, my B flat worked, and also how the registers of my clarinet connected. I wanted to experiment to see if I could get some different results there. And those are pretty specific things that I'm looking for, right? Those are problems, challenges maybe, that I wanted to address. And the barrel is something that really is going to go directly to those things. Because if you think about the throat tones, the column of air right above those throat tones is the barrel. And the barrel is going to have a pretty big impact on that. And so I would say, if you're trying to get your throat tones under control, in a way that you don't have them under control, experimenting with barrels might be a good idea. That's going to have more of an impact on that than a lot of other things. Or if you have an old clarinet, a new barrel is going to really impact the way that clarinet works. If you didn't see my video on Is Your Clarinet Blown Out, you should check it out. There's a lot of people that have old clarinets, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the person who should be checking out new barrels for sure. Well, no, maybe not for sure. That's not fair. But it's worth investigating, because that's going to impact. And maybe a clarinet that is blown out or is on the verge of being blown out is going to get some extra miles from having a new barrel. So those are the scenarios by which I think you should be looking for a new barrel. The last scenario by which you should look for a new barrel is if you want to have a lot of fun checking stuff out. And that's what we're about here, so let's do it. I've got 2 of these barrels with blue rings on them. What are these rings about? Should I tell you? I think I should. Okay, a stock barrel is just one size. And if you want to play a little bit flatter, you pull it out if you're a little bit sharp, push it in if you're a little flat. But what that does is it leaves a gap on the inside of the clarinet, which, it's really not the end of the world. We've been using it like that for a long time. But these barrels don't do that. These barrels, they change length by spinning this ring. So these 2 barrels go from 64 millimeters to 68 millimeters. Yes, I just looked at my notes to make sure I didn't blow this. 64 to 68. Well, let me tell you this right now. If you don't know this, you should. This is a B-flat clarinet. This barrel is 66 millimeters long on a traditional instrument. There are some makers that have them slightly different lengths. You should know what length barrel you have. If you're going to buy a new one, that's something that you need to know, is how long the barrel that you already have is. On a B-flat, for buffets and a lot of other makers, this is 66 millimeters. On your A clarinet, that's 65 millimeters. These go from 64 to 68, so that goes shorter, longer, the whole thing. Not wider, I guess, but Brad, get on that. Okay, but actually, unironically, one of these is a different bore than the inside. All of these barrels, with the exception of this one, are what I'm going to reference as the Behn bore. I think Brad does that too, but I'm going to call it that for now, which is a little bit more resistant. Not a lot, We're not talking a huge degree, but a little bit more resistant. And so this one is more like what is known as a Meinig barrel. Meinig barrels, I think that's a person's last name. I'm pretty sure about that. Anyway, those barrels are sort of standard buffet type barrels. And this has that bore on the inside. But let's get to how these bores function. And the thing is, this is going to go all the way in on your clarinet. It's going to be pushed all the way in all the time. And you make it bigger by twisting this, right? So this is as small as it gets. This is 64 millimeters. If it were really cold, I might play it like this. I'm unlikely to play it at 64 millimeters very often. I might play it at 65. Each click, there's a click every time I do this. Here's the smallest. So here's 64, 64 and a half, 65, 65 and a half, 66, 66 and a half, 67, 67 and a half, 68. Now this barrel's longer, which is really cool because what that does is it leaves the barrel put all the way down on your instrument so there is no gap. Now, I'm not a scientist. I just play one on YouTube. That does something different in how the clarinet works. I can't prove it. I don't know why, but I know it does. And I know it because I've been playing these barrels for a few weeks now. And the experience is, I would say it's nuanced, but it's not. It's actually pretty significant in terms of the experience of playing it. And now that means there's no gap. And the way Brad has made this through like the dark arts of something, there never is a gap. I don't know how he did it. He explained it to me once and I nodded as if I understood, but I actually didn't. It's really, really cool how these work because it just makes a straight tube. It might be the bore on the inside. It may have nothing to do with that little gap that's not there, but these play with a very even resistance from the lowest notes to the highest notes. And it gives a very, very consistent playing experience that is different than what I have in my stock barrel that I want to get away from. Sorry, stock barrel. Okay, so these two are made out of Delrin, and there's an aluminum ring. What is Delrin, you ask? I don't know. I'll have to Google it. I should have Googled it before I started making the video, but I don't know. But it is very light. The rings are aluminum, and they're very light. These barrels are a joy to play. They make the clarinet a little bit lighter, if that's a thing for you. It certainly isn't necessarily a thing for me, but I do enjoy having a little less weight on my right thumb. That's not a bad thing. The next barrel I want to show you, 64 to 68 millimeters. This is made out of hard rubber. If you don't know this, you should. Brad makes his own rubber. He's the only person I know that does this. Makes his own rubber, makes his own blanks, makes his own mouthpieces. Most of the time we get blanks from somewhere and then make a mouthpiece. I've never done it, but Brad goes from beginning to end. He does all of it, and I believe this is made from that same rubber. And now this has a rubber ring on it, so it's not a metal ring. It is a rubber ring, and that does impact the experience of playing it. How would I characterize it? I don't really know. We're going to check out the sounds of them. Don't worry about that. You can see that coming a mile away. The next ones I want to show you are these two. They have brass rings on them. This one is hard rubber with a grenadilla overlay. So it's actually wood on the outside. They actually, I don't know if you can see on the video, they have a little bit different profile than the Delrin ones. They're a little heavier because of the brass and because of the extra stuff on it. This one is a rubber barrel with Mopani overlay on it. Both rings are brass. These are heavier. They're probably a little bit heavier than your standard barrel, like your stock barrel, the one that came with your instrument. But that also gives it a different feeling when you play it. Whether it makes a different sound, I'm going to leave that up to you, and believe me, I'm going to play these for you. All right, and then the last one we have is different in one important way. This goes from 61 to 66. So that is quite a bit shorter in the world of clarinet. 3 millimeters is not that far in real life, but in the clarinet world, that's a long, long way. So it goes from 61 to 66. So if you're playing a clarinet that has a shorter barrel as part of the design, this might be really helpful to you. Or if for some reason you play in a way that is very flat compared to how I play, this would be very good for you. I've never played a barrel at 61 millimeters. I've actually never really needed a barrel shorter than 65 millimeters. But This goes to 66. This can be as long as the one that came with your clarinet, or at least with my clarinet. And so super functional. So this is made out of hard rubber with a grenadilla overlay and a stainless steel ring. These all function the same way. They're always pushed in all the way, and you adjust them with the ring. To the tests. You want to hear these, don't you? I want to show you. So here's what I've done. I've played from low F up in fourths. Perfect fourths. F to B flat to E flat to A flat to D flat to G flat to B to E up to high A. I held each one of those notes for 14 beats at 60 beats per minute. That allows me to give you the stock barrel and all 6 of these Brad Behn barrels, and you'll be able to hear the differences in the sound. There are some pitch differences, and I just want to go ahead and say ahead of time that probably had more to do with how tiring it was to do this exercise and put this together. So I'm not going to suggest that that is a barrel difference. That's a me difference, and a me being kind of exhausted after playing long tones for what seemed like 6 days in a row. Okay, so this is a lot of information because what you're going to see is the overtones laid out by the Tonal Energy Tuner app. If you don't have the Tonal Energy Tuner app, if you have, it might be $3, it might be $5, but either way, it is a bargain. Go get it. It's an incredible app. Just do it. It's got a great metronome, great tuner, shows you these overtones if you want them, and that's what we're going to look at. And every 2 beats, the tone is going to change, and I'm going to tell you which of these mouthpieces you're hearing during that tone change. So you're going to see stuff, you're going to hear stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on. I found this a little disorienting. I almost didn't put it in the video, but it's actually pretty cool if you give it some time and orient yourself to it. All right. And then the other thing that I did was I played the opening of the Copland Clarinet Concerto 7 times. And I was going to put them all in the video, but then I thought that's crazy. That's too many. It's too many. That's too long. So I'm going to edit one performance with 7 different barrels. So you can get them side by side. You can hear some differences. Because honestly, I don't think any of my wonderful viewers want to hear me play that 7 times. And if you do, let me know. I'll send you the raw footage of it. Some of it's pretty funny because I got to tell you, not every one of them went perfectly. All right, so check it out. Let me know what you think. I'm keeping one of these barrels. I am switching to a Brad Behn barrel. I'm not entirely sure which one, because I had this experience that I loved each one as I played it more than the last one. And if I went back and forth, I loved the one I was playing each time so much that I was sure that's the one I wanted to keep forever. I've got a big choice to make. It's a big choice and one that I can't go wrong. And those are the best kind. So thank you, Brad Behn. And thanks for watching, and let me know what you think.